Dune Prophecy just concluded with arguably the best episode of its debut season, and my feelings on the whole are mixed. Quite honestly, I didn't love it, which has become a common theme for this franchise for me. Like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and if you're new, check out the rest of the channel and let me know what you think. Let's dive into Dune Prophecy. Full disclosure, the Dune franchise as a whole is not one of my favorites. And look, I know a lot of people love it, and that's fine. It's just not ever been for me, per se. I thought the first film by Denis Villeneuve was good, though I didn't consider it this epic sci-fi masterpiece that a lot of other people. It is objectively, visually incomparable. Some of the best cinematography, set pieces, and production design ever put to film. That aspect cannot be denied. Where it lacked for me was in its storytelling. I thought many of the characters were pretty one-dimensional. A lot of people praised the world building, which I never understood. To me, the world in the universe in which this franchise resides never really felt lived in. It felt lifeless to me. It never feels like a real place. Everything just feels like it's a stage production as opposed to a sprawling theater epic. Now, I will admit that I think the sequel is fantastic. I enjoyed it to a much higher degree than I did the first. I thought a lot of my complaints were addressed for the most part. I think the additions of more interesting characters like Austin Butler's Fayed Rotha help immensely. We get more time with Stilgar, which is great. Javier Bardem is always a pleasure to watch. The pacing was much better with more exciting action set pieces to sort of fill the gaps in the story, and it just felt like a more complete film and together. Then there's Dune Prophecy. Admittedly, per my feelings that I just revealed, I wasn't overly excited for this show, but I did have high hopes for the quality of the production, at least, which is incredible even for a streaming series. This is by far the most prolific aspect of this show. The visuals are stunning. Everything from the architecture to the cityscapes to the vast planetary establishing shots. All of the sets, costume designs, and cinematography are incredible. This series is a sight to behold. It is extremely impressive, especially, as I alluded to, for a television show. All of the special effects are impeccable as well. All of the ships and ground transportation all seem so tangible. There is CGI involved for sure. I mean, how could there not be in today's day and age? But it is very rarely noticeable. This show clearly took inspiration from Villeneuve's preference to utilize practical effects as much as possible, because it clearly shows. The other portion of this show, which is equally as impressive, are the performances. I don't think there's a bad one in the bunch. Everyone in this show, from Mark Strong and Emily Watson to cast members I had really no familiarity with, like Travis Fimmel or Sarah Sophie Bolsnina, they all bring their A game. Where this show lacks for me is in some of the key attributes that the original film did as well: the narrative, pacing, and its character development. Dune Prophecy sets out to achieve multiple things. It wants to reveal how the universe in this franchise came to be. It also wants to present us with the beginnings of the Imperium as well as the origins of the Bene Gesserit. And it does this, but in such a clunky fashion. This series is only 6 episodes long. Why is beyond me, because there's so much to unpack. The writers established so much slowly paced setup in the front half of this series that by the end, a lot of the season's conclusions to its plot threads feel very rushed. And listen, I do like the overall story of this show. Valia manipulating her way to Mother Superior of the Sisterhood so she can take control of the Imperium behind the scenes to achieve power over those who transgressed against her family in the past is inherently compelling. Fimmel slipping his way into the Emperor's circle of influence as a mysterious and charismatic outsider attempting to bring about the downfall of the Sisterhood is interesting. And integrating both of these threads into Tula's story to reveal the long-standing rift between the Atreides and the Harkonnens is a fantastic idea. And if this season had just maybe 2 more episodes, I think the series as a whole would have been much better for it. And I know there's going to be more seasons, but the foundation of this one just felt so unstable because of how much setup there was. There just simply isn't enough time to let it all breathe like it properly should. Along with this shortened runtime comes the dull nature in which these characters are written. Desmond might be the only charismatic character on this show. As I stated above, all of the plot beats are interesting, but my god, are none of these characters very engaging on screen. I mentioned the fact that they're all so selfish. This show attempts to do, like many shows have since its inception, what Game of Thrones did. With Game of Thrones, though, there was always a handful of decent-hearted characters to root for. Almost everyone in this series acts in their own self-interest under the guise of doing what's best for humanity and the Imperium, and they're all just full of shit. I fully understand all of these characters' goals and motivations, etc., but they all do pretty terrible things to achieve those goals. There's not really a character like a Paul to root for. I'd say at least it would be Tula. She seems to never fully buy into Valia's plans. It feels as though she sees the flaws on both sides and actually desires to do what is right, but she's too afraid of her sister to do so. And also, she murders her lover's entire family, so there's that. And Valia, as I spoke about earlier, she wants to bring her family back to the top because she feels as though her family has just been destroyed and wronged by other noble families in this universe, mainly the Atreides. And that's good, I understand, but where it loses me along the way is she kind of loses sight of that motivation and she becomes something different, a person who all they want is power over everyone. And then there's Emperor Corino. He actually does something noble in the climax, taking his own life to not let the Sisterhood control him or the Empire. But again, we don't get enough time with Mark Strong and this character to feel the weight of that decision. Most of the time we spend with him, he's either being used as a tool by those around him, or he's doing something shady to his wife or kids. I don't want this to sound like the characters shouldn't have flaws, because they absolutely should. That's what makes characters interesting and relatable. But they also have to have a redeeming quality that makes you overlook those flaws, and there aren't a lot of characters in this show that put that on display. And everyone else around, they don't get enough screen time for us to fully get invested in their story. And as I stated, while I enjoy the story, I think it is a very well written story. It makes it hard to engage fully with it when there aren't a lot of characters that you can kind of grasp onto. Listen, debut seasons of new television series are tough, especially those attached to such established IP like Dune. It also doesn't help that this series aims to tell a story revolving around characters involved in this franchise that the viewers have never been introduced to. The best aspect of this series, along with the amazing visuals, is its world building. A piece of this franchise I've always had issues with. It adds life and depth to this universe that I believe has been missing. But these two factors don't alleviate the fact that the first half of this show is disjointed in regards to its narrative, and the characters, for the most part, feel pretty lifeless. It's not a bad show by any means, but it has some pretty glaring flaws. And I think for a brand new series, it is a pretty serviceable beginning. And with the story it's attempting to tell, I do think that it has the potential to turn into a very, very good show.